Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Mosaic Podcast. It is my honor today to have someone who I don't really know how I know, but it's surprising to me that I didn't know her all that well. We were involved in the same exact field. We were doing the same exact things. She was a PR person and a well-known author. Uh, I was at Hay House. I think we were in the same places probably hundreds of times, but we only met about maybe a year ago or two, sitting when I passed her in a restaurant and said, "Hold it, you're Arielle Ford. I just want to come up and introduce myself. I'm Danny Levin." Right? So it's an honor to have her here and to be talking with her. Let me give you a little bit of background in case you've been in a cave and don't know who this woman is. Arielle is a love and relationship expert and a leading personality in the personal growth and contemporary spiritual movement. For the past 25 years, she's been living, teaching, and promoting consciousness through all forms of media. She is a speaker and the producer and host of the Evolving Wisdom's Art of Love series. Her mission is to help people find love, keep love, and most importantly, be love. She's a gifted writer and the author of 11 books, including the international bestseller, The Soulmate Secret: Manifest the Love of Your Life with the Law of Attraction. She is also the author of Turn Your Mate into Your Soulmate, devoted to exploring a simple, fun, and effective way to attain groundbreaking shifts in perception so that you can embrace and find the beauty and perfection in yourself and your mate. She has been called the Cupid of consciousness and the fairy godmother of love. She lives in La Jolla, California with her husband and soulmate, Brian Hillard, and their feline friends. To join her newsletter, go to www.soulmatesecret.com, and we'll post that information below. Arielle, welcome to the Mosaic Podcast, and thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Danny. I'm looking forward to wherever we're going to go today.
Yeah, we don't know.
We don't know.
So before we go to wherever we're going to go, I always like to start out by getting a little background information and to ask you, what was your favorite thing to do when you were a kid growing up?
I liked swimming in the ocean. I liked lying in the grass and watching the cloud formations go by. And I think my favorite thing to do was to read books.
Read books, wow. And so when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I never really thought about it. I just didn't. I'm not a planner. So I may think about what I'm going to have for dinner, but unless I'm going out of the country and I need to plan a trip, I'm just not a planner. So I never really thought about my future. I didn't have any wild dreams or desires, and things have just sort of unfolded along the way.
So I know you do a lot of stuff with the law of attraction, and yet, like with the law of attraction, that's like an interesting perspective, right? Because
I was 30 when I learned the law of attraction. And from the moment I understood it, I started using it and found out that if you know what you're doing, it really, really works.
Right.
So it's an automatic thing now. I have pretty much mastered the law of attraction. I enjoy it. I didn't think about using it for my own love life until I'd been playing with it for at least 12 years. And then it sort of dawned on me, oh, I wonder if I could manifest a soulmate this way. And I did. And you know my soulmate, so you know what a good job I did.
Oh, my God. I don't think there's a better man in the whole world than Brian. He is a gem. You just melt when you look at him. So how did that happen? How did you find each other?
Well, I woke up one morning at the age of 43. I hadn't even opened my eyes yet. I was just lying in bed, and I was sort of feeling around the bed, trying to find my 25-pound cat, which wasn't there. But I noticed that I had this big, empty expanse of bed, which had me think, oh my God, I forgot to get married. As I was lying there, I started thinking about, how did I forget to get married? How could I be 43 and live in Los Angeles in this great city and have a great business and lots of friends and cool stuff to do and no husband? So I decided to make a list of everything that I had used to manifest my career. And it was 9 pages long.
Wow.
And then I decided to systematically use the law of attraction to manifest my soulmate. And 6 months later, at a business meeting, Brian and I met. The moment we met, we knew, everybody in the room knew we were at a business meeting. And 3 weeks later, we got engaged.
3
And
weeks.
yeah, 3 weeks.
Wow.
And a year later, we had 3 weddings and our 21st anniversaries in a couple of weeks.
Wow. So how did you go from the girl that was lying in the field, looking at the clouds, swimming in the ocean, not really thinking about what the future would look like, to the girl who manifested 9 pages of what she needed to make her business successful, which was hugely successful, right? I mean, you were one of the top PR people in the country,
Yeah.
especially in our field, which was the self-help field, right? Or the spirituality field.
Yeah.
How did you go from that person to that person? Was there a connection that happened, or someone you met, or something?
No, I went to college because my best friend was going to college. So I basically followed her because I had no plan. And I got out of college and I had no plan. And I had a boyfriend who had a stepfather who was the GM of a private club in Miami, who gave me a job in marketing. It turned out I had a real sort of knack for it, and was successful. And, and then stuff just happened. I sort of just followed the breadcrumbs. There was never the intention that, I'm going to open a business someday. I opened the business solely because one day I figured out how much money I was making my bosses. I was working at a Beverly Hills PR firm. And when I figured out how much I was bringing in for them versus what they were paying me, I was like, this doesn't work.
Right.
And made up my mind that I needed to start a business, and everything I needed fell into my lap, and the clients walked through the door, and everything was wonderful until the day that it wasn't. We had a big recession in LA. I didn't know what a recession was. I just knew that I lost 80% of my business in 6
Wow.
weeks, and it wasn't coming back. And I didn't like being broke. And the good thing about being broke, what was really awesome about it, was that I discovered that I hated all my clients and that
Wow.
I didn't want any of them back,
Wow.
and that I needed to find a new career. So
Wow.
I spent a year at the bottom of the pit. I was desperate. I had Epstein-Barr. My boyfriend dumped me. It was one of those kind of years. Everything that could go wrong was going wrong. I didn't have a direction for my life. And then one day I saw the picture of Earth taken from space. Remember that picture? The NASA
Yes.
picture?
Yes.
And when I saw the picture, I knew what my purpose was. It all sort of came to me in an instant, which was my purpose was to only represent people, places, and things that were contributing to the planet. Now, I knew what my purpose was, but I didn't know how to make that happen. I didn't
Right.
know what that was. But suddenly I had a purpose. And a few days after that happened, a friend of mine took me to lunch. And while we were having lunch, he said to me, if you could represent anybody in the world, who would it be? And this was 91 or 92. And I said, oh, there's this man out there. I'm pretty sure you've never heard of him, but I think he's the best kept secret in America. And Patrick said, well, what's his name? I said, his name is Dr. Deepak Chopra.
Yeah.
And he said, not only have I heard of him, but my friend Penny works for him.
Wow.
Let me have Penny call you.
Wow.
So later that day, this woman, Penny, called, and she said, and Deepak was still living in Boston in those days, she said, Dr. Chopra called me this morning and he asked me to find him a publicist. He's coming to town next week. Do you want to meet with him?
Oh my
And
God.
at this point, he had one self-published book out, okay? He was not a rock star yet. And I said, yes. So I showed up for the meeting, and he was 20 or 25 minutes late, and he came rushing in, and all he said to me was, I only have 5 minutes.
Wow.
And I said, that's great. I only need 2. He said, go. I said, if you're half as smart as I think you are, you'll hire me. He said, okay. And that was the start of a 12-year working relationship. And to this day, we're still very close friends.
Amazing. And so when did he sign his deal with Bantam? Because I remember when I was at Hay House and we did our first conferences,
He was never with Bantam. He was with Harmony, which is still a division of Random House.
Random House.
Yeah.
Why do I think, I seem to remember that I called, well, maybe I called.
He had this self-published book that then got bought. So maybe it was Bantam that bought that book,
Maybe,
but I
yeah.
never worked. That book was old and I never worked on it. And then, so he just released his 80th book.
Wow.
His 80th.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I remember because when I came to Hay House, it was around creating conferences, and Louise was drawing about 1,000 people on her own. And I was in a spiritual community called Ananda, and the founder of that community was drawing 200 people on his own. And I went to Hay House and I said, how do we get from 200 to 1,000? Because that's what you've done. And they said, well, and we decided, why don't we create a conference together where we have both of them speak and add a few people? And we brought in Wayne and Shakti Gawain and Deepak, who their publisher said.
Well, then, around that time, Hay House hired me because at that time the tour was Deepak, Wayne, Louise, and Barbara DeAngelis. So
Yeah.
I was doing the publicity for a couple of years around that grouping, which I think was in 93, 94, something like that. So I was working with all of them as well. And then,
So how in the heck did we not meet each other? Because I think I came
because I never left
later.
my office. I was making 100 phone calls a day, smiling and dialing, booking them all TV, radio, and print interviews. So I didn't go out much. I was, I couldn't leave the phones.
Wow. Wow. But it's amazing sometimes when you are in the same place. I often think of this, that if people are supposed to meet, they or not supposed to meet, they can be in the same grocery store and someone can be on aisle 7 and someone can be on aisle 3 and they'll never see each other.
Brian and I are wedding officiants. And one of the weddings we performed a year ago in Balboa Park was with a woman who lived across the street from the man she's now married to for 7 years and never saw him, never met him. I had another one who lived in the same building for 6 years with a guy she never saw, never met, until they met online and discovered they lived in the same apartment building.
How crazy is the world? And so a lot of the things that I look at and a lot of things the show's about is what would we see if we could see what we don't see? And there's perfect examples of your mate is right in front of you, but you just never even see them.
It's about divine timing. It's very simple to me. There was a point where when I was living in LA, Brian was living in a hotel like a few blocks away that I did the PR for. So I was in this hotel all the time. Wow. He was actually living there. His balcony looked over my balcony. And we know that it's perfect that we didn't meet because it was not the right time. Nothing would have ever gelled, but we were sure we passed each other a gazillion times because we both were in this hotel all the time.
Wow. So I want to go back to something that you said, because you had this very successful career. The recession hit. It gave you the opportunity to pick up stakes because you were realizing a lot of the people you were working with weren't necessarily people that you wanted to continue working with.
Yes.
Where did you get the fortitude, first of all, to just restart? Because so many people get stuck in the place that they're in and never reimagine themselves or reconfigure themselves. Or I almost wrote a book called V2, which is the second version of your life. Like, how did you do that?
I suffered a lot during that year. I was worried sick all the time. Fortunately, when the recession hit, I didn't have any credit card debt and I had really good credit. So I was able to sort of maintain, and I had like one part-time employee and 1.5 clients. And so I had a reason to get out of bed, but I needed direction. But as soon as the direction became clear and I was using my Shakti Gawain technique.
Right, creative visualizations, right?
And I knew I had a history of being successful with that. I just kept focusing on what will it feel like to be sitting in my office, having a slate full of clients who are all contributing to a world that works for everyone. And so I didn't need to know how it was going to happen. So that's where people get screwed up all the time. They want to know how. How is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? And it's not my job to know how or when or even why. It's my job to be clear that what I've asked for is already mine. And as I stay clear and as I stay in this present now moment, knowing and trusting that all has been taken care of, there's nothing missing. You know, my creativity didn't go away. My personality didn't go away. My ability to make shit happen never went away.
Right.
I just needed to wait for the right confluence of timing to have the new, because once Deepak showed up, everything else just, it was like dominoes to the point where I was turning down business. I remember the first time, it was either Jack Canfield or Mark Victor Hansen called me, and the first Chicken Soup book had just come out. It wasn't a big hit yet, but it was just out. And they called and they said, we want to hire you. And I said, no, that's impossible. I'm just too busy.
Wow.
And it was Mark Victor Hansen. And Mark said to me, what if I taught you how to expand time? Then would you be able to take us on?
Wow.
I said, deal.
You got it.
I went on to work with them for the next 3 years as things grew and grew and grew with them. So, you know, when I was on purpose, I first had to find my purpose. And then once I was on purpose, I never struggled again to find clients. I never sought out clients. What I did was sort through them. So my gift, I believe, is that I can spot people with star quality before other people do. So I picked knowing what their future held. And I also turned down people knowing that no matter how hard I worked, they were never going to be rock stars. It just wasn't in their DNA.
Wow. So these moments are exactly what we like to focus on in the show. What I love is that moment where everything was going well for you, that you could you ever imagine that you would hit rock bottom? Could you ever imagine this thing called the recession would come and take you out? And that moment when you were suffering in that place where what is happening? What am I going to do? Could you ever imagine that you would then 1 year later have your whole world change again?
No. And had you told me, I wouldn't have believed you.
Yes.
You know?
So looking back now, because I love that, had you told me, I would never believe you, because that's what we do. We tell people, oh, it's going to be okay. And you're going to get through this. But you're very realistic, right? And you're looking at it at that point in time. So looking back now to people who are going through some of the things you've gone through, either losing everything or starting up everything or feeling like they have a purpose, but they don't know how it's going to happen. What would you sort of say to them from your experience that could help them bridge that time?
Well, there's a couple of things. One, I would tell them to get an egg timer or set their clock on their phone for 3 minutes. And for 3 minutes, I want them to suffer worse than they've ever suffered in their life. I want them to say the most horrific, horrible, negative stuff to themselves. Like, you are such a loser. You're the stupidest person on the earth. Nobody's ever going to hire you again. No one's ever going to love you. You are just like kill themselves with negativity. And if you do that with 100% focus, you can't do it for 3 minutes. Yeah. You just can't. You can't keep it up for 3 minutes, because then your brain, your rational mind kicks in and you start to laugh because you know it's not true. Yeah. But the importance of doing this is it lets off the steam. So instead of trying to suppress how rotten you really feel, you've given it voice, you've given it release. You know, my sister used to talk about this in her dark side work where she talked about how you would try to take a beach ball and hold it under the water, and you hold it and hold it and hold it, but eventually it hits you in the face.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you go into denial with how bad things are. So you do this for 3 minutes, even if you have to do it every day. But then once you've let the steam off, then go do Louise Hay's work. Go stand in front of a mirror and say to yourself, I'm sorry you're having a hard time, but I really, really love you. And you're really brilliant and wonderful. And your mom loves you and your kids love you. And this one loves you. Your dog loves you. And good things are going to happen. And you deserve it, right? And then you fill yourself back up. But this requires something most people aren't capable of. It requires putting on your big girl panties or your big boy shorts and being personally responsible for your own thoughts. You know, our friend Wayne always said, don't believe every thought that you have.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're not true. It's just thoughts that you're having. So it's up to you to be aware of the thoughts that you're having and then manage them. You wouldn't let a child walk around going, oh, I'm 7 years old and I'm already such a loser and my life sucks and nothing good's ever going to come of this and I have no friends. You wouldn't tolerate that.
Yeah.
But yet adults do this to themselves all
Yeah.
day long. And so
And
unless you're willing to be the adult for yourself, then you deserve the life you get. And I know that sounds harsh, but that's what it is. You can have a 3-minute pity party. That's my rule. 3-minute pity party once a day. And then you got to get back up on the horse and start riding.
and so one of the things that I see in people is that the things that they say to themselves, and I'll include myself in this too, because I'm not devoid of self-loathing in those times, okay, is I would never in a million years say to someone I don't know, let alone a close friend, let alone even an enemy, I would never say to them the things that I say to myself that knock myself down or that knock.
But everybody does it. That's sort of like the big secret. There's this big self-love movement out there that drives me nuts. It's so stupid. You know, unless you have severe self-loathing that you need professional counseling for, the truth is all of us have this negative critical voice in our head. The idea is, are you going to have a spiritual toolkit to tap your way out of it or Sedona method your way out of it, talk your
Yep.
way out of it, or
Yep.
are you going to let it overtake you? We all have this. We're all going to die with it. But it doesn't mean it has to run our lives. And that's what people are doing. I hear women in my workshops all the time. I'm too old. I'm too fat. I'm too damaged. All the good ones are taken. I've been divorced 3 times. There's no good men out there. I'm too smart. I'm too successful.
Right.
All these excuses.
Yes.
And the truth is, none of that is true. It's just the way to,
Yeah.
keep yourself what you think is safe. And great, if you want to be safe, you're going to die alone. I can promise you that. Or you're going to do what our friend Susan Jeffers always said, you're going to feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you, so do you feel the reason we do that is because we're scared of what would happen if we were? Why do you feel people do that? Why do you feel it's sort of a birthright?
I don't have the answer, and honestly, I don't care why they do it. I don't. You could give me the whole saga of your early childhood and how you were beaten and tortured and neglected and abused. And the truth is, you're 65 years old right now. You can keep living with that story, or you can do something about it. So I'm only interested in talking to the people who are willing to do something about it. I don't care about this. I got a story.
Right.
I spent
Right.
a lot of years on the couch,
Right.
and all that talk therapy helped a little bit. So I have context, I have understanding. But the truth is, and I know you know this, the fastest way to be healed is to find your soulmate. Because when you're with your soulmate and you see the love coming out of their eyes for you, you have this vertical ascent to heaven. You don't have to wait till you lose 25 or 50 pounds or till you're making $100,000 more than you're making now. None of that's important. Put yourself out there. Find somebody who loves you just the way you are for who you are right now, because that's all they want too.
Yeah.
Everybody just wants to be loved for who they are. There's 7.5 billion people alive on the planet right now. Half of them are single. Half of Americans are single. There is no shortage of good men and good women out there. The only thing missing is you showing up to the party.
Wow. So what you're hearing, if you're tuning in just late, or you're hearing this, is such a beautifully simple approach, but it's not Pollyannish at all. When did you get the permission or give yourself the permission to just call it out and call it out like it is? Is that how you've always
That's
been?
just kind of my nature. I do that with everything. I am not good. I'm not a diplomat. I bottom line everything. I'm not good at keeping my opinion to myself. If I think you're doing something stupid, I'll tell you, and I'll say it nicer than I'm saying it now. But for the most part, it's just my personality. I I don't have much patience for whining, complaining, bitching, moaning, poor me, I'm a victim. You know, I just don't. Like, I'll have one conversation with you and I'll give you the strategies that will help. But this is why I quit coaching. I quit
Yeah.
coaching because I just can't stand to take money from people who won't follow my advice.
Right.
You know, and I don't want you to pay me to listen to you whine. There are people with PhDs that have a good education that are trained to not look bored. You know, I don't get excited by listening to a victim.
So in the world of people that you work with, what percentage of people are those? Are those very few? Are people, because
Well,
what
I like I said, I don't do coaching,
right,
you know, at all anymore. So I do a live workshop maybe 3 or 4 times a year, whether it's Esalen or Omega or 1440 or the Chopra Center. And then I do a lot of stuff online. I have online courses. And then I'm spending a lot of my time right now writing a novel, which is super fun.
fabulous.
But so I teach a little bit, not a lot, only because it's like, I waited till I was 43 to find my soulmate. I don't want to leave him home alone in La Jolla while I'm in a ballroom in St. Louis teaching desperate women how to find love
Right,
every weekend.
right,
Like,
right.
what's the point of that? I'd rather be here with Brian on the deck looking at the sunset.
Yeah,
But here's what I know for sure, Danny. I know with 1,000,000,000% certainty that there's more than enough love in the world for everybody.
love
There's
this.
plenty of soulmates for everybody. And the only thing keeping you, if you're not incarcerated, and even there's been love, is your unwillingness to put yourself out there. I mean, right now, there's never been an easier time on earth than it is right now to find a soulmate. 1 in 3 marriages is now starting online.
Wow,
And the divorce rate for people who meet online is super low.
wow.
Now, there's plenty of women say, oh, I tried it, it didn't work for me. You may have tried it, but you didn't know what you were doing. So in my online course, I teach people exactly what to do to be successful online. So you don't have to make the mistakes. And it's a long conversation, which we don't have time for, and it's counterintuitive to what you would think would work. But it is super easy to find a soulmate. Now, what isn't easy is learning to live with your soulmate.
Yeah.
Now, that's a whole different conversation. Finding the soulmate, piece of cake. Living with the soulmate, much more work.
I love on your website that you have, and we'll give the link to that. You have find love, keep love, and be love. Can you go into that a little bit? Because I love.
Well, the thing about being love is that, so you talk to most people, especially married people, what's the most important relationship that you have? Oh, my wife. Oh, my husband. Then you follow them for 24 hours and you look at how much interaction they actually had. 5 minutes, 7 minutes tops. They got work, they got kids, they got aging parents, they got neighbors, they got cats and dogs, and they're super busy. So if you want to nurture your love relationship, that requires time and attention and commitment. So when I talk about being love, it's like, here's what I recommend you do. First thing I recommend you do is you get some of these. These are rose-colored glasses. And you start wearing your rose-colored glasses around your mate every day, and you use them to look for what's right instead of looking for what's wrong. And every time you find something that's right, then you acknowledge them for it. Oh, Danny, I saw you were helping little Johnny with his homework today. You're the best dad ever. You're the best husband. I'm so proud to be your wife. Give him a hug, walk away. You do that 5 times a day, you're going to have a great relationship. So that's part of what I mean about being love. If you're single, the other part about being love is really starting to honor how much love you already have in your life. So as you know, the law of attraction states we draw to us the people, places, and experiences that match our state of being. So most single women live in this world like, oh, I'm all alone. Love is missing. I'm never going to have anybody. I'm so lonely. Everybody's got love but me. And that's not true, because if you look at the people around you who loves you, your parents, your kids, your siblings, your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, your best friends, your dogs and your cats. Create a daily gratitude process for how abundant love is in your life. Oh my God, I'm the luckiest girl in the world. And name off the 32 people that you know love you. And when you do that every day, your heart automatically becomes magnetic to romantic love, because that's what the frequency at which you're vibrating. I have so much love, lucky me. And then eventually the romantic love comes.
Yeah. When I hear you speak this, I often say something in the book that I wrote, The Mosaic, but I love the image of a mosaic, because sometimes the pieces of a mosaic only touch at the very corner. They don't touch flush side to side. So really maybe 2% of the pieces are connected to each other. But that 2% connection is enough to continue and build the mosaic and keep the mosaic whole. So if we would focus more on what we're similar in, what we like about a person, rather than the things that we don't like about a person, suddenly the things that we don't like a person diminish, because we're focusing on what is there. It doesn't mean they disappear.
Right. Right. Well, that's what I call wabi-sabi love. So wabi-sabi is an ancient Japanese aesthetic that seeks to honor all things old, worn, imperfect, impermanent, and it looks to find beauty and perfection in imperfection. So you're imperfect, I'm imperfect, everybody we're going to meet up with is imperfect, and yet we've been brainwashed to seek perfection.
Yeah.
If only he would change, if only she would change. And they're never going to change. That's the first thing you have to accept. Whoever it is that you married is never going to change, which is why dating for a year is so important. You really want to figure out who this person is before you take sacred vows. But what you can do is change your perception of their behavior, whatever the behavior is. Now, this doesn't count if it's abuse, addiction, or bad behavior,
Yeah.
then you need professional help. But the daily annoyances, the way they chew their food, they leave the door open, they don't take the garbage out, they squeeze the toothpaste from the middle, they don't put the toilet seat down. There are remedies for this, and it's what I call wabi-sabi love. And you just have to be lighthearted and be willing to make up a new story about it, or be willing to negotiate with them, which is basically, if you put the toilet seat down, I'll never do XYZ again. Like I do, the thing I do that really drives Brian crazy is I like to chew on things. Like if there's a straw, I'll chew on the straw. Now, I don't know why he finds this so offensive, but he has trained me not to chew on straws. And I don't want to make him crazy, so I don't do it. There are things he does that I've pretty much trained him not to do. And there's other things where he's basically said, no, that's never going to change. Just accept it.
Yeah.
And people somehow go into marriage not understanding that there will always be irreconcilable differences. The question is this a reason not to love them? And
Yeah.
chances are, no, it's not a reason not to love them. So in that case, make up a new story.
I was thinking about it even as kids, when we're babies and we're born, it's cute to scrunch everything and put it all over our face. But then we get to a certain age, when we're 2 years old and we're scrunching it and putting it all over our face, we get punished for it, saying, how stupid is that? But, 6 months ago, you were complimenting me and saying how adorable I am. It's the same. It feels like it's the same thing in a relationship. Some of the things that we found the most charming when we entered the relationships become some of the most annoying. And
And
so,
that just happens, and you just have to understand that that's the way it is. So what are your strategies for a happy life? There's 5 things that consistently make up a great marriage. The first is chemistry, although the chemistry is the least important.
yeah,
There's connection, compatibility, good communication, which can be learned, thank God. But the single most important factor is a shared vision for the future. Do you want what I want, and vice versa? Do you want to live in San Diego by the sea, or are you a mountain guy and you've got to be in Denver? Do you want to take your vacations on a glacier, or do you want to be on Bora Bora? do you want to have kids or don't you want to have kids? Are you a dog person or a cat person? You know, like and it doesn't have to be you're in total alignment or agreement, but the basics, like where are we going to live and what's life going to look like, have to be agreed upon before you get married.
Okay. And
Because,
so what happens to those people that are deeply in love and have those conversations and they start to say, oh, whoa, we're out of alignment on some of these things?
Sometimes you have to walk away, and you should have found that information out before you got deeply in love.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is part of why online dating is so successful, because you can sort through pretty quickly. If you're a practicing Catholic and you want to go to church every Sunday or twice a week and raise your kids in the church, you may not want to be with you or me, because we ain't ever going to church.
Right.
Jewish, Christian, Hindu, Buddhist, pagan, right?
Yeah.
So that's stuff that you can sort through, because you're making the single most important choice and decision of your life when you pick a partner. So you need to first know yourself and see what your soul is most calling for. And then you need to be able to walk away when somebody shows up with one of your deal breakers. If you're a 36-year-old woman and your baby clock is ticking and you have got to have children, you don't want to be with a 55-year-old guy who's divorced with grown children who says, no, that part of my life is complete. Yeah. So as much as you might like and love each other and think you're soulmates, he may be your soulmate, but he's not your life partner. And what you're looking for is a soulmate life partner, somebody who's appropriate for you and has the capacity to live the life you want to live.
I love everything that's coming out of your mouth. And I want to just encourage people. You have a book, Wabi Sabi Love, right? That will explain a lot of the things that you're talking about. Please, if that concept is new to you, go to the store and get that. What I'm interested in is the transformation that happened from the 43-year-old woman who woke up and felt her bed and said, why is this empty?
Right.
To the woman who now seems to know and really not just know intellectually, but know from a real place of understanding the tools involved in making a relationship work.
Well, what happened was we got engaged 3 weeks after we met. Brian moved in with me within 60 days, and then we got married a year later. So after the actual weddings, stuff started to come up. And what I realized that was almost as horrifying as realizing I'd forgotten to get married, I realized I had no partnership skills. Wow. I had never even lived with anybody. And the thing that I excelled at, my greatest strength, was being the boss. Being the boss with an alpha masculine male,
right,
doesn't work.
No.
So I quickly realized that I needed a new skill set, and I dedicated myself to becoming a student of love. Like, I know he's my soulmate on every single level, and yet how do we lead a harmonious, happy life together? And so that was my quest, and that eventually morphed into me doing 200 one-on-one interviews with the world's leading love, marriage, and relationship experts, which have been distilled into my book, Turn Your Mate into Your Soulmate, where I road tested all the greatest advice I got. I didn't understand men. I didn't really get that men are so different and respond differently, and that if you talk to them in the right way, you can get anything you want from them. Right? They're easy. They're so easy. But I didn't know that,
No, totally.
I was just repeating the behavior I grew up with where, my parents hated each other. So I did it out of necessity. And
so circle back now, because and I might have misunderstood you or misheard you, but when we were talking about those sort of core values, if you want to be in the mountains and I want to be in the ocean, and we need to know those things before we get into it. It feels to me like you just fell in love and you didn't have time to examine some of those things.
No, but I did, because even though I was in love and even though I knew on the first day he was my soulmate, I also knew that I didn't know a thing about him.
Yeah.
Right? And I had been working hard my whole life, and I wasn't about to commingle funds with somebody I didn't know, or, commit my very big life to someone I didn't know. And I was very clear with Brian that we were not going to get married until we knew each other for 1 year.
And yet you got engaged 3 weeks. I mean, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but these are like really.
But I didn't. Here's the funny thing: I didn't tell anybody.
I see.
I didn't tell anybody until about 3 months afterwards. He said to me, "When are you going to tell your mother that we're engaged?" And I said, "Well, you don't understand. Once I tell her, a bunch of stuff's gonna happen, and things will be out of our control."
Yeah.
And he said, "Okay, I'm up for that." And of course, I told her. And she said she'd already figured it out. But then there was, the engagement party in Florida and the engagement party in LA and the engagement party in Portland. And, it just turned into this whole big thing. So, but being engaged doesn't mean, there's still a back door.
Totally.
And I wanted to be really certain that this is who I wanted to spend my life with. Now, I would say I was 90% certain.
Yeah.
But I wasn't about to okay, let's go to the courthouse and do it right now.
So I guess what I'm wondering, because this is really at the back of the questions that I'm asking, there's some people that say, well, love conquers everything. And right. And that if you fall that madly in love, you'll put up with the fact that he wants the mountains and you want the beach. But what you're saying is, what are you saying?
Well, what I'm saying is you have to know what's going to contribute to your long-term happiness. Now, it may be that you're totally okay taking separate vacations for your entire life. He'll go skiing. I'll go to sit under an umbrella and read a book, in Tahiti.
Right.
And that might be fine. But I knew for me, I had a certain picture in my mind. I was at a point where I actually wanted to live and work with somebody 24/7 under the same roof. I had a long bucket list of places I wanted to travel to. So I knew my soulmate would have a passport and would be a good traveler and would be, and Brian had traveled way more than I had. It was incredible. So there were things that I knew. I also knew, I told him the day that we met that I never wanted to have children because I didn't want to wait. I didn't even know his last name when I told him that.
Wow.
And that's when I found out he didn't want to have kids either. So, at being 43, I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm just going to be upfront and do it right from the beginning.
Yeah. So to those people who say, well, any relationship is a compromise, what do you say to them?
That's true. There's compromise in all areas of life. I prefer the word creative solution to compromise because for me, a compromise is everybody's losing somewhat. But with a creative solution, I think you could create something new that's a true win-win. But yeah, I mean, that's, it's all a negotiation at some point,
So one of the things that I'm really figuring out and working with, and I think I mentioned to you, I'm working with this man who created who's working with swarm intelligence because he watched the way fish swim and birds fly, and they don't compromise, they don't make decisions, they don't fight each other, they're in
entrainment, right?
I don't know, what does entrainment mean?
So when you see birds flying in formation, that's what entrainment is. So they're all in alignment, doing the same thing in a shared consciousness way.
Exactly. And so what I really believe about relationships, and maybe I'm Pollyannish, is that at a certain point in time, compromise and individuality goes out of the way. We learned long ago, it's not what I want or what you want. It's what's the best thing for us? Like what would happen?
That was the first agreement we had. We would choose what most serves the relationship. And I think that's a good way to go. If it works for you, if you can be that way, and so we don't actually ever have hard decisions. We're at a point now, there's a lot of stuff I want to do that he doesn't want to do. And I just have the freedom to go do it with my girlfriends,
Yeah.
And there's stuff that, he's interested in that I'm not interested in. But we have enough common interests that we've learned to appreciate stuff we would have never done before. For instance, so he was a jock and he played professional ball and all this stuff. And watching sports on TV sounded like, crawling naked over broken glass. And I've learned to come and appreciate basketball in a way that I have to remind him when the games are on.
Wow.
Right? So,
Fabulous.
that's part of the growth process, is that you want to be able to share each other's passions. And that's what I call having a generous heart. So even though your knee-jerk reaction will be, well, I don't want to do that, if it's going to bring them so much joy or interest, then why not see how you can find a way to make it interesting for yourself?
And would you say that there's a point where I and you become we, and there's sometimes where I don't want to do that is okay, but there's some points where who I was disappears into who we are. Does that happen?
I think it's a trinity.
Yeah.
I think there's you, there's me, there's us. And if we're wrapped in the arms of God, then we're
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. I love that. So out of all the things that you've learned, out of all the things that you've taught, out of all the books that you wrote, out of all the people that you've talked to who have frustrated you and anointed you and celebrated you, if you had one thing and you would boil it down to one thing that you would say to people, what would that one thing be?
Go for it.
Wow. Wow. I love
Just
that.
go for it. Whatever it is, whatever that desire inside of you is. Deepak always says that 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 if you have a desire, it's proof that the seeds for the fulfillment of the desire already exist.
Love that. Love that. And then the one final question that I always ask, and then I want to get your information and figure out and let people know, because I can't imagine people aren't wanting to flood your information sources to have more of you. When you look at the world today, albeit we've made a lot of advancements, we're no longer tarring and feathering people, maybe, but is this the world that you always dreamed that that we would hand over to future generations?
No.
Yeah.
No, I think we're in desperate times, and I think we're at a choice point. I think the election of 2020 is going to say a lot about the future. I have 16 nieces and nephews, many of whom now have small babies, and I worry for them, because if things don't change soon, they are going to be in a world of hurt. I'll be dead, right? Like you and I, we're
Yeah.
going to be dead when the worst happens.
Yeah.
We're going to get out of this fine, but they won't. And I think if there was ever a time where people need to be woke in the biggest possible ways, they need to get on board and start voting their values, donating their money to candidates that represent their values. And they can't just sit back and think that their vote doesn't count, because it does.
Yeah. So is that the change that you would like to see, to have people vote? Because one of the things that I want to try and create is, in the Constitution, the first three words are "we the people." And we've come a long way from "we the people." I can't remember when we were the people, when "we the people" existed in my life, and I'm 64 years old.
Well, I think the Constitution needs to be rewritten. I think it's an antique document that has not a whole lot of relevance to living in a country with 357 million people. So that's the first thing I would like to do, is update it and rewrite it and have it make more sense. And, it's nice that we have this boy child king who thinks he's in charge of everything, but we need to get back to having a civilization where there's respect and decency and civility, and we can have differing opinions and still break bread together.
Yes.
What happened to actual facts and truth, and all this nonsense about fake news and alternative facts, and a guy in the White House who is now told 6,127 lies as of an hour ago. This is not right.
Yeah.
It's just not right. And I'm going to do whatever I can to make a change. And, and it's not a right wing, left wing thing. It's more of, we need a leader who actually, has read the job description, gets the job description, and wants to do what's in the best interest of the majority of the people.
Wow. So I want I want to just share something with you and get your feedback or not, however you feel to. I believe everything happens in its time. I believe the reason we're in the situation that we're in is because some of the models that we're using, some of the paradigms that we're working on are dissolving paradigms, dissolving models. I believe the model of being led by a vertical relationship where there's a leader who fixes the broken and people that help those who can't be helped is changing. And the model that I really want to help initiate and bring forward is this model of a mosaic model, where the mosaic pieces just show up together, where they come together, and simply by being together and interacting with each other and relating to each other, we find solutions to things in a new way.
Well, I don't think I have much to add to that conversation, because for me, a mosaic represents chaos.
Oh, really?
So I don't, I don't see it as a solution. I think order and structure has a place. I think systems have a place, but, our systems have been blown up. So, I'm not a strategic thinker.
Yeah.
It's not my forte at all. But I would say if they would just let me in there for 2 weeks, I could find and hire people who could get a lot of good jobs done.
What would you do? What would be the first thing? Because that's really what I wanted to get at. What would be the first thing that you would do if they would let you in there for 2 weeks? The first thing.
Oh, well, I think I would want to put somebody in charge of the EPA who actually cares about the environment. I'd want to put somebody in charge of healthcare that wants to figure out how is it every other top tier country in the world provides medical services to their people without going broke. Germany, Sweden, Canada, all these people manage to have socialized medicine so people get taken care of. I'd find somebody who wants to head up the FDA that actually cares about the toxins that are going into our food and aren't going to be paid off. I'd like to find someone else at the people who oversee the drugs, it's the FDA, right? Who's
Yep.
going to, just sort of figure out a scale at which people can afford the medications they need. There are good people who are smart, effective administrators that need to be given the opportunity. Get somebody in charge of HUD that knows that, REOs are not Oreos and you don't eat them. I mean, it's just so embarrassing. Or you have this woman in charge of education who's never visited a real public school, I mean, let's get real here. We deserve to have good health and good education and good infrastructure. And all of that is non-existent right now. We know how to do these things. We got to the moon because a man had a vision that we were going to the moon. I just want somebody with a vision that we can get back to normalcy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we need some good men and some good women who aren't on the take, that aren't lining their pockets, that aren't toxic narcissists, to get back there. And I think what's good about what's happened is that we now see what we didn't see before when it comes to racism and anti-Semitism and all of that, because the guy whose name I won't say has given permission to be the ugly selves that they are. And so that's the healing. And what will that look like to be healed? Like, why is it that, I grew up Jewish. I've never suffered from an anti-Semitic anything in my life, because I was either in South Florida, where you're either Jewish or Catholic, or in LA, and there's more Jews in LA than there are in Israel, I think. So I never experienced that. Now suddenly I live in a city where people are going to synagogue and being shot. The rabbi lost a bunch of fingers. What's going on here? This doesn't have to be, but we need leaders who can hold the space for a conversation where we can find a way to live together. And that isn't in existence right now.
So in closing up for me, and this is really just my final statement that I would like to make, is what I love about the work that you're doing is that it asks people to be honest with who they are and what they want. It asks people to look at their belief systems and their thoughts and to choose what it is they want to believe and see the beliefs that are holding them back. And I think as a country, we need to do the same thing. What works in a relationship of a marriage is also a microcosm of what works in the macrocosm of the world. And
And
so,
the number one most critical component in a marriage is respect.
yeah,
That is the number one thing. And that's what's so sorely lacking today. People don't respect each other's time or space or words or anything. You know,
exactly. And so part of the goal that I really want to set forward is that when we come together as a people, as a nation, and we contribute to figuring out how we solve our problems, and rather than think that someone is going to solve them for us, we live in a very destructive time right now where silos are getting bigger and stronger, and each silo accuses the other silo of being in the wrong, and both of them are right, because we're siloed up. We're following our like-minded communities. We're doing what everybody in our community does, and they're doing what everybody in their community, and we're having a civil war of thought, really. And we're having and it's time. It's really time. You said it so beautifully. Enough of past stories. I don't really care how you grew up. I don't care what you did. It's time for us to take responsibility for the. God bless you. God bless you. It's time for us to take responsibility for the beliefs we have, for the words that we say, for the things that we do, and to start to find those similarities, that wabi-sabi love that will bring a nation back together again. And so for those interested in it, please contact me about the $1 a month club, because I'm excited to share those things with you. I would love to share that with you, Arielle, on another time, and with Brian, because I think there's a huge movement about to happen where the people together can create the solutions that they want without being divided, but by coming together. Through a swarm intelligence, through a swarm possibility. And so I just want to say thank you so much for being here. Please, before we go, let people know, how do they get in touch with you? What's the best way to find you?
Sure. I'm really easy to find. So my website is soulmatesecret.com. My free webinar is at soulmatepassion44.com. And I'm on Facebook and Twitter. And my email address is my name at gmail.com. So I'm just super easy to find.
And we will put all that information under show notes so that people can get you. Again, thank you so much for taking your time. I know you have a life that is very rich and full, and thank you for being my friend and for sharing these moments with me.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thanks for having me on, and Brian and I will have lunch with you sometime soon. We're just
can't wait.
Yeah, he's got a bad case of bronchitis, so we haven't been making any plans, but one of these days he'll be over it.
Please give him a big hug when he's no longer contagious.
Okay, good idea.
Okay.
All right.
Big love to you. Thank you so much.
All right.